So a lot of people think they're not an alcoholic because they've never been arrested. They've never had a DUI. A lot of people think never been arrested, can't be a sex addict, never cheated. I never cheated on any of my partners. Never, ever, ever. Never been arrested, never paid for sex, never paid for a lap dance. I was completely monogamous in all of my relationships, in thought, word, and deed. Okay, now I'm exaggerating. Obviously, didn't have thoughts that were 100% kosher, but like I'd never exposed myself. I'd never been a peeping Tom, like peeping in people's windows. So I thought, hey, I'm doing fine. And I had a therapist who said, no, you're not a sex addict because you don't do any of these things. You've never like run out on work or a real life appointment to go masturbate. It's like nothing like that. It's just that my life just didn't quite work, and so that's why I was willing to check out this sex addiction thing and this love addiction thing and this codependent relationship thing and this Al-Anon thing. I was willing to take a look at that because in my 40s, like, life was passing me by, and it was embarrassing, and everyone was moving ahead with their life compared to me. So I thought, let me try things. Let me go to yoga. Let me go back to therapy. I was always like looking for a way to change my life. I remember when I was looking for an acting teacher, and I was talking to someone about that, and I said, I'm looking for an acting teacher who will change my life. And I did find an excellent acting teacher. Ironically, one who'd gotten into quite a bit of trouble in the sexual arena. But he was a great acting teacher. But he had some sex addiction problems of his own. Wow, a lot of people in Hollywood and Los Angeles in the entertainment industry struggle with making good decisions in the arena of sex and love. So people typically start sleeping a lot better once they join a 12-step program because they're admitting that they have a problem, and that they're admitting that they don't have 100% control over this problem. So in 12-step language, when you say, I'm powerless over drinking, or I'm powerless over drugging, or I'm powerless over sex and love, it's not a statement that you have no power. It's just a statement that your degree of power is not sufficient. You need help. And it's also not a statement that I'm not responsible. No. You're 100% responsible, and because you don't have sufficient power to exercise good judgment in these arenas, you need to get help. It is on you to go get help. So you're 100% responsible, even if you're an addict, and you're responsible to go get help, because on your own, apparently, in different areas of your life, your own power is not enough. So there are many different levels of consequences of addiction. So some people get off the elevator of addiction at like the 6th floor. They're still married, they've never been arrested, never had a DUI, they've got money in the bank. Okay, that's like a high bottom. And then other people are living beside trash dumpsters, eating throwaway food. Okay, that's a low bottom after getting 2 felony convictions, and okay, that's a low bottom. So you don't have to be living out of a dumpster. Okay, you don't have to be blowing dudes for veggie burgers to have a serious addiction. It's just, does your life work? That's the question. Does your life work? And another question is, do you hate yourself? I've just all my life I've had these periodic tidal waves of self-hatred, and they've completely gone away over the past 4 or 5 years. Completely gone away. I never ever experience a tidal wave of self-hatred anymore. I get like little bits, little shots of shame once in a while, a little shot of regret, a little bit of compare and despair, but never do I get the tidal waves of self-hatred that I used to suffer. So if you hate yourself, you very likely have some kind of addiction, some kind of emotional addiction, substance addiction. That was, for me, one of the great benefits of a 12-step program, is that I was able to lead a consistent life instead of having a life that was packaged in all sorts of different compartments, and get very nervous when people from various compartments came together. Then it was like, I just feel at ease. I mean, I think you can tell this with my lengthy streams. I'm someone who's fundamentally at ease with myself now at age 52. Like, this is who I am. I'm talking to you hours a day. I can very happily stream for 7 hours straight. Just talking to people, interacting with the chat. It's fun, I enjoy it. And what enables me to enjoy it is that I'm able to build a consistent life. I'm not hiding things. This is who I am. Now, that doesn't mean I give my political opinions in every social circumstance. Doesn't mean I talk politics, sex, or religion with clients. Of course not. But I'm fundamentally the same. Just the amount that I will share depends on the situation. But I'm not hiding a double, triple life like I used to. I used to have these great fears. Oh, if they only knew what I was doing, they'd throw me out of the synagogue. And don't have that fear anymore. I am at home with myself, with the world, with other people, with living in community. And I'm not doing things in any area of my life that is going to cost me clients, going to cost me friendships, going to cost me my relationships with family and relation. And like the more consistent you can be, the more open you can be, the more that you can like talk about all very appropriate, the better off you can be. For example, if you've got a career, say you got a career teaching yoga. Well, if you can talk about that in your religious context, with your friends, with your various volunteer commitments, with family, with acquaintances. Okay, the wider the funnel you build towards your business. Okay, if I can talk about my YouTube career everywhere I go, as long as it's appropriate, and I do not talk about my YouTube career everywhere I go, but generally speaking, I can, and then that of course widens the funnel for people who will watch my videos. If you have to hide what you do for a living, it's a horrible life. I remember that because I used to blog about the porn industry, and it was not something I wanted to talk about socially. So I was hiding what I did for a living for about 10 years, and that was no fun. It didn't assist me professionally or personally. I felt bad about myself. I was leading a double life, and like the shame and the fear of being exposed. It's like living in shame and fear. It sucked. So another sign of addiction is you feel powerless. Like, I mean, up until about 6 years ago, I'd say from about age 13 until about age 45, I had this sense that I could not turn down sex with an attractive woman. I just couldn't do it, and that I was weak, and that I would give up everything for sex with an attractive woman. I would betray everyone, everything I held firm. Like, every religious value I held, like every personal relationship, my standing in the community, my standing in my professional community, my standing at work, my standing in a volunteer community. I just give it all up for sex with an attractive young woman. And it was kind of this haunting dread that I had, because I knew that with this weakness, with this kind of powerless before an attractive young woman, that I couldn't build anything, that I would just blow everything up I could possibly at any time. Now, luckily, I think most men are just like me. I'd say 80% of men cannot resist sex with an attractive young woman, no matter what the consequences. The only thing that constrains them is that it's very rare that an attractive woman goes around offering sex, particularly to someone my age, 52 years of age. Okay, just doesn't happen. Women, by and large, aren't offering it up unless it's to men who are 10s, 9s and 10s, like alpha males who have a lot of money, prestige, power. Okay, they get women flinging themselves at them, but most guys don't face this temptation. The reason that most men and most women are faithful in their marriages is lack of opportunity. The more options you have, the more likely people are to cheat. But what was haunting me was my own sense of my own weakness in this area. And I would never have used the word powerless, because I understood myself as having power, but it's just kind of this haunting dread that I took with me through life, that no matter what ideal I devoted myself to, no matter how hard I worked to build up something awesome, I would throw it all away, just blow it all up to bang some 19-year-old. Another sign that you might be a sex addict is if your relationships tend to be messed up. Now, I've had a lot of solid relationships that were just cool. Everything was going well. They were relaxed. I was relaxed around her. She was relaxed around me. None of them lasted though more than a year. And then I've also had more than my share of chaotic relationships, where she'd break up with me 6 times in a year. So there was a lot of chaos in about half of my relationships. So I noticed a pattern to ago that pretty much all my girlfriends had fathers who were sex addicts. So they were seeking to recreate that trauma and that drama. That's what we tend to do in our romantic and sexual relationships. We want to recreate the drama, the most intense emotions we felt as children, and then try to heal them, try to work them through. So if you're essentially living in foster care for years, you're going to feel this tremendous need to choose people who will recreate that sense of abandonment, so that you will go through life with this tremendous fear that you're going to be abandoned again, that your spouse is going to leave you. So I know people like this. They love their spouse, and for decades they've had this fear that she will leave, because that abandonment was the dominant emotion he experienced in childhood, and so he had to choose a wife who would enable him to recreate that frightening emotion, that intense emotion, and then he's trying to heal it by forming a successful marriage. And generally speaking, other people do not give us these corrective experiences. It would be nice if they did, but that generally doesn't happen. So generally speaking, we don't transform. Generally speaking, we stay on the same level of emotional maturity as all our siblings, our parents, their parents. It's like, this is how it goes for emotional maturity. Over generations, over siblings. So we all probably think, oh, I'm so much more mature than my sister or my brother or my mother or my father. It's a complete delusion. 95% of the time. It's very rare that people develop a higher level of differentiation. It requires so much work. It's so scary to be able to. Differentiation means your ability to stand on your own 2 feet while staying in relationship to people who matter to you. So it's easy to sacrifice who you are to try to keep people in your life. So you just keep sacrificing who you are to hold on to the most important relationships. But that's a low level of differentiation. Also, it's easy to just be who you are and screw everyone else. You're not concerned about maintaining relationships. That's also a low level of differentiation. So differentiation is your ability to handle anxiety. Like, how much anxiety can you handle before you start acting in a self-destructive manner? Like, most people, after a certain level of anxiety, they start drinking, drugging, pursue destructive activities, because when the anxiety gets too hard, they have to act out. And so, for example, I've had a lot of borrowed functioning, had a lot of relationships where I thought, oh man, I've really turned things around now. I'm happy, I'm successful, I've got this great relationship, everything is going well. I've finally kicked things to a higher gear. Now I'm living life large. Now I'm moving into the winner's circle. Life is good, but it was all borrowed functioning because I had hooked up with, for a few weeks, few months, someone who was kind of propping me up, someone who was making me feel better about myself, someone who was reducing my habitual level of anxiety. And that only lasts for a few months. No one can prop you up indefinitely. That party always comes to an end. So periodically in my life, I've been adopted, so to speak, by other people, other families. They kind of saw me as this. I'm susceptible to cults, like any group that will take me in and say, yay, Luke, we love you. You're part of the family. That just like vibrates right here for me. It's just really intense. It just kind of meets some really deep inchoate need that may have little to do with my conversion to Orthodox Judaism. It's like, here's my family. This is the family, the community, the bond that I've been missing and searching for so long. And we're in Beverly Hills, folks. We're on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills. How do you like that? Good times. Happy times. Okay. You masturbate all the time. Big sign that you're a sex addict. And I would go through phases where like I'd use porn, masturbate like 3 times a day, or even like hours a day. Not particularly proud of that. I tried to fight it, and then I eventually found it was easier. Just like give into it, and it'll burn itself out within a week or 2. Like you'll feel so disgusted eventually, covered in so much self-loathing that you'll break out of that cycle, and then it'd come back 6 months, 2 years later. So not a good sign. Like one of the best things I ever did for myself was a complete cessation from masturbation. So I've not engaged in that practice since June of 2013. That's why I'm your moral leader. Your kink needs to be fed more and more and more. So, for instance, I'd get online, I'd watch pornography, and then I'd always looking for more and more extreme, hardcore content. I'd like to play these erotic games with my partner, and I was always looking to increase the intensity. My relationships were revolving around intensity more than intimacy. It's like, let's do this scenario, and let's do this, and let's do this, and always trying to increase the intensity. Always chasing those intense highs. as opposed to building intimacy with a partner. Another sign you might be a sex addict, you have sex without regard to potential consequences. So I made some bad choices with some of the women I went to bed with, and they got revenge on me when I left them. Sometimes I was just with them once, and then they felt used and abused, and did everything they could to socially tear me down and to create as much pain for me. I had one guy, he left the country, okay? He had this vengeful woman who would just keep faxing his workplace, and so it was so bad he just left the country. Went to Europe and started up an English language newspaper in Europe. So luckily I've never had an STD, so I've never paid that kind of price. I've never done anything illegal, never been arrested. I've never slept with a married woman. Never slept with anyone underage. Like, always kept it legal, stayed away from married women. But I wasn't always discriminating. I remember I slept with a lot of ugly, overweight women, and my friends would go, "Oh, look, how could you do her? I lost so much respect for you." And I noticed that women I'd date, if they ever found out I'd been with some ugly chick that they knew, they were just completely disgusted, because they'd regard any other past partner I'd had as a reflection of them. Preoccupation, that hurt me. So I was always either thinking about erotic highs or chasing them, and or they were just always kind of lurking in the background, and so I wasn't doing good quality work. The rest of my life wasn't thriving because I was preoccupied with chasing romance, chasing sex, chasing the combination, preoccupied with fantasies of grandeur. Oh shoot, I don't want to turn right. Oh no, I think I can go straight. Please let me go straight. Please let me go straight. Please let me go straight. Oh shoot. Okay, I better be a good citizen here. Damn. So if you're a doctor and a lawyer, you typically bill $200, $300, $400, $500 an hour, and you're preoccupied by sexual fantasies. Your addiction's costing you at least $1,000 a day. And if you're a YouTuber, and say at my level, and you're preoccupied by sexual fantasies so that you're not able to do high quality YouTube streams, then your addiction could cost you $20 a day. But it's good. Since I got into recovery, I've gone days without having a sexual thought, or without having a sexual thought that lasted longer than a few seconds. So I used to preoccupy about it for hours a day, and then you can really make a difference. You can really get your life back. So when you're that preoccupied, it's like something has hijacked your life and controls your life, and just kind of keeps you headed in a self-destructive direction. Double life, of course, big sign that you're an addict. Feel like you can't stop seeing someone because you're addicted romantically, emotionally, sexually. Very bad sign. Sign that you're an addict. And I've been in that. I just couldn't stop seeing someone, and my God. I was addicted to love. You might as well face it. You're addicted to love. Might as well face it, you're addicted to love. But it sucks. I remember other people can usually see you better than you can see yourself. So I think the first time I fell in love was I was 16, and the girl reciprocated. I need some bloody water. Where's the water? Bloody hell. That's a water bottle. What do I have to do to get some water around here? Okay. So I was 16, and she was Rainy. She was a year younger than me, and we'd gone to school together at Pacific Union College Elementary School. I was a grade above her, and I never really noticed her. But then it was the summer of 1982. So it was the summer between my sophomore and junior years of high school. And I was working as a summer camp counselor at Pacific Union College for this kids camp. And it was the first job I ever held where it didn't end in me getting fired. So my definition of a successful date is any date that does not end in a cloud of pepper spray. This job was my first job that didn't end in me getting fired. I'm so nice, I just let that guy get in front of me. It's Tikkun Olam. And so I fell for her, and she reciprocated. Like this, I guess I'd fallen for girls before, but they hadn't really reciprocated. Or if they had reciprocated, I then became so frightened that I ran away. In 6th grade, the most beautiful girl in the class dropped a note on my desk asking me to go with her. And I was so frightened by that prospect that I just teased her unmercifully. And completely blew up that prospect, that possibility. So now, 1982, I'm 16, just turned 16. So I kind of had my first girlfriend, though we didn't use that terminology. And I mean, people were talking about us because like we were just so all over each other. Though I wasn't yet confident enough to kiss her, but I really enjoyed applying the suntan lotion to her at the Pacific Union College swimming pool, where we'd hang out most afternoons. And yeah, like there was all this chatter and gossip about us, but as I was saying, my point was people tend to see you better, more clearly than you see yourself. The family that I was staying with that summer, the Muth family, they said, "You're not in love, you're in love with love." They said it better than that, and I'm blanking on what they said. But it was the equivalent of "you're in love with love." And yeah, I loved the high of being in love, because the rest of my life was just so emotionally cold, emotionally barren, unhappy. Like my default state for almost all of my life has been dysthymia, like low-grade depression. Low level. Very rarely have I been suicidal, but just kind of had this low-grade depression all my life. So when I got the high of falling in love, it was a rocket that just took me out of that dysthymia. And when I had that elation, excitement, the thrill of being in love, I transported myself out of my normal, habitual, sulky self, and it was a drug. And I'd experienced that earlier. I started becoming obsessed with girls at about age 9. And even earlier than that, I guess I'd have to put the beginnings of my addiction to fantasy at about age 6, when my parents would want me out of the way. And so I learned that I could get out of the way and entertain myself just by telling myself stories and developing elaborate fantasies. And so I got an addiction to fantasy. Initially, it was adventure, boys type fantasies of going to islands or rafting down a river like Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, or Treasure Island, the Robert Louis Stevenson novel. And then about age 9, my fantasy started changing to fantasies about girls. And fantasies about girls have like dominated my life for the next 40 years. And I loved whatever these fantasies were, because I would just leave my habitual state. I would leave reality. And so initially my fantasy addiction, my escape was adaptive. Like, it helped me escape the misery of my life. But then the more and more I tuned into it, the more and more I would turn to it to get high, to escape from reality, then the more maladaptive it became, so that I wasn't concentrating on my schoolwork because I'd rather lose myself in fantasy. I was kind of missing out on real world interactions because I was just kind of so lost in my daydreams. And that became a little bit crippling. I think a few years ago, I was announcing to family and friends, I found a new mental illness that I've got. I got maladaptive daydreaming. Yeah, press 1 to start blissing out. I would just like bliss out on my fantasies, leave reality, get much happier, and but it was a narcotic. It had like a narcotic effect on my endorphins. You know, I'd get wee, I'd get happy, and I'd leave reality, because reality was not a fun place for me. Okay, bye-bye.